Breaking updates. Very important.
This is what theaters look like across the world, and it just keeps getting worse. The memes. Let's say that you were in a Hollywood movie, and the trailer for that movie dropped on YouTube, and it instantly became the #1 most downvoted trailer in the history of the platform.
Hollywood was supposed to be Rachel Zegler's fairy tale. Handpicked by Disney to lead the live-action Snow White remake, she was poised to become the next big thing. But somewhere between The Glass Slipper and Happily Ever After, the story took a shockingly dark turn. Instead of a star being born, we witnessed something closer to a star imploding. How did Rachel Zegler go from Disney darling to the face of a box office bomb and a PR catastrophe? Buckle up, because this is the story of how one actress's big break became her biggest breakdown.
She was also just a spoiled, entitled, narcissistic brat.
But I was basically the only person in the theater. Very few people wanted to see this. Even the little kids who like Disney movies, even they don't seem to be turning up in droves for the movie because the movie is really, really bad.
The seeds of this disaster were sown long before the film's release in the seemingly innocuous realm of press interviews. As Zegler embarked on the promotional circuit, early interviews revealed a perspective that was unconventional, to say the least. Instead of celebrating the timeless magic of Snow White, she appeared to actively distance herself from it, even critique it. She openly dismissed the 1937 animated classic, labeling it as not just outdated but creepy. This wasn't gentle revisionism, it was a stark rejection of the very source material that had granted her this golden opportunity. Her comments about the prince, deemed unnecessary and antiquated, and romance itself, seemingly relegated to a bygone era, resonated poorly with a fan base deeply attached to those classic elements. These weren't just youthful modern interpretations, they were perceived by many as disrespectful and dismissive, alienating the core audience Disney was hoping to attract. The initial whispers of discontent grew louder, a palpable sense of unease spreading amongst loyal Disney enthusiasts. The cracks in the fairy tale kingdom were beginning to show, and the foundation was starting to crumble.
The movie was absolutely terrible. It's not the single worst movie I've ever seen, but in every way that the movie differed from the beloved 1937 original, it was worse.
The reason we had Rachel Zegler on the docket is she's an asshole.
Then came the trailer, the supposed beacon of cinematic excitement designed to ignite anticipation. Instead, it acted as a lightning rod for negativity. The Snow White trailer didn't just land online, it crash-landed, greeted not with enthusiasm, but with widespread bewilderment and outright hostility. The downvote counter on YouTube became a grim spectacle, rapidly climbing to unprecedented levels, smashing records for trailer disapproval across the platform. The comment sections transformed into digital forums of frustration and anger. Fans, critics, and casual viewers alike voiced their disbelief and disappointment. Where was the enchanting atmosphere? Where was the whimsical charm that defined Snow White? Many felt that this modern reimagining had fundamentally misunderstood the essence of the original, stripping away its heart and replacing it with a tone and aesthetic that felt jarringly out of sync with the beloved story. The online backlash was not merely a murmur, it was a deafening roar, a clear and unmistakable signal that the movie was facing a monumental uphill battle even before a single ticket was sold. The dream of a triumphant, progressive remake was dissolving into a stark, undeniable nightmare.
I think it's fair to say that no one can stand the star of this movie.
She continued celebrating herself by posting that she's in the #1 movie in the world, which is a remarkable thing to post when you are the laughingstock of an entire industry. This is what narcissism looks like. Narcissism for 200.
When Snow White finally debuted in cinemas, the commercial reality was even more desolate than the most pessimistic online predictions. Across continents, from bustling city centers to suburban multiplexes, theaters showing Snow White were eerily empty. Rows of seats remained unoccupied, popcorn buckets untouched, creating a sense of cinematic solitude rarely witnessed for a major Disney release. And in a move that seemed to actively sabotage any remaining goodwill, Rachel Zegler engaged in a series of social media posts that defied all conventional wisdom of public relations. She shared videos from within these cavernous, vacant theaters, not with concern or reflection, but with a visible, almost unsettling glee. Her laughter echoed through the digital space, interpreted by many as gloating, or at best, profoundly disconnected from the film's catastrophic reception. Instead of acknowledging the stark reality of the box office failure, her posts came across as a bizarre act of self-congratulation, a tone-deaf response that poured fuel onto the already raging fire of public criticism. The internet predictably erupted in a fresh wave of memes, satirical videos, and scathing commentary, relentlessly mocking her perceived narcissism and apparent obliviousness to the unfolding disaster. The PR misstep was monumental, turning a box office disappointment into a full-blown public relations meltdown.
Now, ever since the debut of Snow White, it has been nothing more than a box office disaster, not just for the Walt Disney Company and Bob Iger as the CEO, but also for Rachel Zegler.
Hello, Disney. You're going to have to redo your film again because this woman is a pig and you fired Gina Carano for far less than this nonsense.
The silence in the theaters was deafening, but behind the closed doors of Disney Studios, the atmosphere was likely one of frantic alarm. Millions upon millions of dollars had been invested in Snow White, spanning production costs, elaborate marketing campaigns, and the sheer weight of studio expectation. Yet the financial returns were not just disappointing, they were shockingly abysmal, a gaping chasm between investment and revenue. Industry insiders, seasoned Hollywood veterans who had navigated countless box office cycles, reportedly watched the unfolding debacle with a mixture of disbelief and grim recognition. Whispers began to circulate, giving rise to the term the Zegler effect, a shorthand for the speed and severity with which a rising star could derail their own trajectory through miscalculated public pronouncements and perceived arrogance. Snow White wasn't simply underperforming, it was rapidly becoming a textbook case study in crisis management, a cautionary tale circulated throughout Hollywood boardrooms on how not to launch a major studio film, and crucially, how not to manage a public persona when entrusted with a beloved cultural property. The fallout extended far beyond mere box office numbers. It was impacting reputations, careers, and potentially the very strategic direction of a media empire.
I was referring to the movie as sand beige, and it was so noticeable off the top, but it's no really knock on her. If you did the autobiography of Malcolm X, would you cast Tom Hanks? If you remade Moana, would you cast a little Irish guy? No, you wouldn't. So that was off the top.
The reverberations of the Snow White disaster extended beyond the immediate box office bomb. Whispers and rumors, often the currency of Hollywood, began to circulate with increasing intensity, painting a picture of professional repercussions for Rachel Zegler. Rumors emerged of roles evaporating, projects mysteriously shifting direction, leaving Zegler conspicuously absent. High-profile ventures, such as a voice role in Pixar's highly anticipated Toy Story 5 and a starring part in a reboot of the lucrative Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, were suddenly, according to industry sources, no longer featuring Zegler. Was this mere coincidence, an unfortunate confluence of unrelated casting decisions? Or was it a direct consequence of the Snow White PR debacle, a calculated move by studios to distance themselves from perceived controversy? The industry buzzed with speculation, dissecting every casting announcement and project update for clues. Had Rachel Zegler inadvertently become a liability, a radioactive element in the risk-averse world of big-budget filmmaking? The narrative had decisively shifted from a story of box office failure to one of potential career implosion, highlighting the precarious nature of fame and the unforgiving consequences of missteps in the public eye. It served as a stark and sobering reminder that in the glittering realm of Hollywood, talent alone is rarely sufficient. Reputation, public perception, and a degree of humility can be equally, if not more, vital for sustained success, especially when entrusted with safeguarding beloved cultural legacies.
And I get it, there's a difference between spoiling and whatever, but to go out and badmouth everybody and talk smack about, older movies in the same franchise, the canon story, I guess? Yeah. I don't know, dude. I feel like they would have had better control of.
Faced with the escalating crisis, Disney, a corporation renowned for its carefully crafted image and masterful PR machinery, entered full damage control mode. Reports circulated of frantic internal meetings, emergency strategy sessions, and desperate attempts to reframe the narrative. Efforts were made to subtly rehabilitate Zegler's public image, to portray her as more relatable, more likable, to counter the prevailing perception of arrogance and detachment. However, by this stage, the negative momentum was overwhelming, the damage deeply entrenched. The Snow White saga had transcended the realm of a simple movie flop. It had morphed into a potent symbol of something far more profound, a questioning of Disney's very direction and creative compass. Had the studio, in its relentless pursuit of modernization and relevance, become overly fixated on pushing social messaging, at the expense of the timeless storytelling and enchanting escapism that had defined its legacy for generations? Were they, in their zeal to update classics, inadvertently disrespecting the very essence of those original stories, alienating the loyal fan base that had sustained them for decades? The Rachel Zegler meltdown in this context became a focal point for broader anxieties and criticisms directed at Disney, sparking a wider, more critical conversation about the soul of the studio and the uncertain future of fairy tales in a rapidly evolving entertainment landscape. The question wasn't just about one actress's missteps, it was about whether Disney itself was losing its magic touch.
It doesn't need a prince to save her, and not surrounded by 7 weird people. Oh, okay, just CGI fictional goblins, I guess.
To truly understand the Snow White debacle, it's crucial to place it within a larger context. Disney's ongoing strategy of live-action remakes and the increasingly polarized cultural landscape surrounding discussions of representation and wokeness. For years, Disney has leaned heavily on reimagining its animated classics, often with immense box office success. However, this strategy has also drawn criticism, with some accusing the studio of creative bankruptcy, prioritizing nostalgia and familiar brands over original storytelling. The Snow White remake became a lightning rod in this debate, amplified by pre-existing tensions surrounding representation in media. While Disney positioned the film as a progressive update, emphasizing diversity and a stronger female lead, these very elements became targets for backlash. Accusations of wokeness were leveled against the film, often conflating genuine critiques of creative choices with politically charged rhetoric. The controversy surrounding the 7 dwarfs, replaced with magical creatures after criticism from Peter Dinklage, further fueled this firestorm. The Snow White situation, therefore, wasn't just about one actress's PR missteps. It became entangled in broader, often contentious conversations about creative integrity, audience expectations, and the ever-shifting sands of cultural and political discourse in the entertainment industry. The film inadvertently became a battleground in the so-called culture wars, where genuine artistic debate often gets overshadowed by ideological clashes and online outrage.
There are spoiler alerts here if you intend to see the movie, which most likely 100% of your audience does not. They replace the prince with a common criminal. So there is a prince-like figure, but he's no longer a prince, he's a criminal. They clearly want to diminish the love story. I think after the backlash from those comments a year and a half ago, whenever they were, they did beef up the love story a little bit, but nevertheless, he plays an ancillary role.
Looking ahead, the question remains, what does the future hold for Rachel Zegler, and what lessons can Hollywood glean from this high-profile implosion? For Zegler, the path to redemption, while steep, is not necessarily closed. Hollywood history is replete with comeback stories of stars who stumbled, learned from their mistakes, and re-emerged with renewed humility and focus. A period away from the spotlight, coupled with a carefully crafted apology and a strategic choice of future projects, could potentially allow her to rebuild her public image. Landing roles that showcase her talent, perhaps in independent films or projects that allow her to demonstrate range beyond the Disney princess mold, could be crucial. However, the shadow of Snow White will likely linger for some time, and overcoming the deeply ingrained negative perception will require sustained effort and genuine contrition. For Hollywood as a whole, the Snow White saga offers several stark lessons. Firstly, it underscores the critical importance of managing talent expectations and providing guidance on navigating the treacherous waters of modern media and public discourse. Secondly, it highlights the dangers of alienating core fan bases in the pursuit of modernization or perceived relevance. And finally, it serves as a potent reminder that in an era of instant online feedback and heightened cultural sensitivity, authenticity, humility, and a genuine respect for legacy are more vital than ever for both individual stars and major studios seeking to maintain their magic and connect with audiences. The story of Rachel Zegler and Snow White is far from over, but its unfolding chapters offer a compelling, if cautionary, glimpse into the evolving dynamics of fame, fandom, and the ever-turbulent world of Hollywood.
I know that you've told me before that your version of Snow White is different, and it's more of a 2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that?
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story. With a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
In the harsh glare of the Hollywood spotlight, the story of Rachel Zegler and the Snow White debacle serves as a stark and unforgettable cautionary tale, echoing through studios, agencies, and aspiring stars alike. Don't Go Full Zegler has, with remarkable speed, become the new, albeit darkly humorous, industry shorthand for public relations self-sabotage, a succinct warning against arrogance, tone deafness, and the perils of alienating your audience. It's a stark reminder that even within the seemingly magical confines of the dream factory, hubris and miscalculated pronouncements can shatter careers with a speed and finality that rivals any villain's curse in a fairy tale. Will Rachel Zegler manage to navigate this storm and orchestrate a triumphant comeback? Can Disney, a studio grappling with broader creative and strategic challenges, rediscover its lost magic and reconnect with its core audience? Only time will tell. But one thing is undeniably clear. This cinematic tempest has left an indelible mark, prompting deep reflection not just on the trajectory of one actress's career, but on the very essence of storytelling in Hollywood and the evolving relationship between creators and their audiences. What lessons can we learn from this modern-day Hollywood fable, and what do you predict will be the lasting legacy of the Snow White meltdown? Share your thoughts and predictions in the comments below.